Hello future tech leaders, I am Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
What transactions using reversal journals? What this exactly means is, I spoke about the journal entries the other day. The journal entry is nothing but a transaction that you have not recorded on NetSuite. It can be your expense, it can be your team outing that you went for, it can be your travel, or it can be anything that has not been registered on NetSuite through any transaction. Towards the end of the month, the finance team would be closing the periods. During that period, they might find a couple of transactions which were not recorded on NetSuite. In that case, they put in a journal entry. In NetSuite terms, it's called as a journal entry. In other ERP terms, it's also called as a journal voucher JV. They call it as JV or journal entry. Why transactions using reversal journal entries? If you take this and if you are putting in a journal entry now, let us say on March 11th, and if you select the reversing journal date as 1st of April, what happens is automatically it reverses the journal as on 1st of April. So the balances are not carried forward to the next month. It automatically reverses the journal entries. I'll show that to you. So do you need to require approval of journal entries? If yes, it will go through our approval routing process and so on and so forth. So this is enabling the accounting period window. If you select this, what happens is you see this. A lot of transaction date outside a posting period has been set to be sellout. To prevent users from saving a transaction with the date outside of the selected period, you can change the preference to warn or allow. That's what it says. Which is the next one? Allow transaction date outside of the posting period. So you can select a window. So within these 3 months, within these 2 months, the users will be able to make a change. But in usual scenarios, this is not done. So this is disabled actually so that they cannot post transactions once the period is closed. I've shown you how the period would be closed in the managed accounting periods the other day. So once that period is closed, you will not be able to make any changes if this is unchecked. But if you check it and say that I want to allow the users to make the changes in the next 2 months, and then if you say warn, they'll get a warning message saying that you are actually posting a transaction outside of the period which is closed. Is that? And then it allows you to make the changes. Any questions there? So this allows quick close of accounting periods. This is checked now. What happens is when you go to your managed accounting periods. So there is an option wherein you have to close everything by checking these options. I told you that there is a checklist. You got to close all of these. Only then you will be able to close the period over there once that is closed. However, by enabling that particular feature, what happens is you can close multiple periods. You can just click on this option. And if you select any period, let's say FEP 2024, if you select and click on submit, it automatically closes every period prior to that. All periods will be automatically closed irrespective of the transactions or anything that you have over there. You don't have to select each one after the other. Usually, this feature is given only for finance administrators when they know what to close exactly. I mean, you don't want to accidentally close every period which is prior to this. That's the reason you have all those things. So, on the statements, do you want to show only the by the way? Is that clear? Great. So, show only open transactions on statements. So, you have all these statements pertaining to your sales and purchase and everything. So, on all these transactions, do you want to show only the open transactions over? That is what the preference is. But no, usually this is not selected because you want to see every transaction that happens within next week, even if it's closed, pending. Whatever it is, you want to see those on the statements. So that's the reason this is disabled. I'm sorry, it is disabled. It's not enabled by default. Open transactions on statement, open transaction by date. This is what you call a sort. You know, a sorting sort of a thing like open transaction by statement date or by today. Usually it is set to today. Credit limit warning. When you are setting up the customer and the vendor, there is an option wherein you can set up the credit limit for them. What is the credit? So a credit is for the customers that you know. We have all customers that you've been dealing with them for the past 5 years. And we know for sure that the payment would be made on time. Or even if they do not pay it on time, there is a credit limit we just set up. So on the customer record, you can set up this credit limit and you can set up a warning that you know the credit limit has crossed. The Dasten Salanzen that you have set up, we have not received a payment. So do you want to block the orders when that happens? Do you want to ignore or do you want to enforce orders? So if you select enforce orders and if a customer has not made a payment, so the credit limit is $1,000 USD. And the sales orders are like $999 USD as of now. And we did not receive payment for this yet. Now if there is another sales order for, let us say, even 2 or, which is beyond the 10,000 limit. Even for this too, what do you want to do? Do you want to have just a warning? Or do you want to hold the sales order completely? Or do you want to just ignore? These are the preferences. And this is do you want. The credit limit includes the orders as well. So if you select this, so what happens is, even if there are multiple sales orders for this and not fulfilled, it has been not fulfilled. However, let us say this is like 1,000. This is like another 8,000. And there is another sales order for 1,000. So it will include everything, even if they are not fulfilled. If it is closing toward 10,000, then the credit limit is, it reached the threshold of that. So where exactly do you set up this? You go to list relationships and customers. I will show it to you while creating the customers for you. But since we are talking about that, I just wanted to show you where exactly it is. So you scroll down and there is references. I think it's under financial. You see this? You can enter a credit limit for this customer over here. So there is a hold. There is a hold option here as well. Do you want the preference to be picked up automatically or do you want it to be turned off? You can specify that at the customer level as well. Now let us say you have 10,000 customers in the system. And for 2,000 customers, you want to turn off the credit limit completely. So you can set up that at the customer level. However, if you set up auto, then it automatically picks up the accounting preferences from here. Whatever you have mentioned in the accounting preference is what will be picked up from there. Questions there? Likewise, exactly the same option that you have for default when the payments to be printed, when the credit limit warnings again. So I have shown you the customer record here. Likewise, if I open the vendor record, even on that you will have the credit limits to be applied. And even on that you can choose. If you want to have the, just the vendor limit warning over there, or do you want the vendor credit limit including the orders? All these things can be shown over there. Questions there? I take that as a no. So what is this departments, classes and locations? These are the three different segments that we spoke about yesterday. Sorry, on Tuesday probably. We spoke about what is a department, what's the class, and what is location. Do you want to make these options mandatory on the transactions? When you mark them as mandatory, what happens is when you go to your purchase orders, let us say there is a field wherein you can select the department, its classes, locations. So these will be marked as asterisk like this. Date is a mandatory field here as of now. So if I mark them as mandatory, then this particular location that you see here, it gets as mandatory. The sales channel is your department actually class. Someone has renamed it to sales channel, so this is actually the class. You see classes. Someone has renamed it to sales channel and this is your department which they renamed it to division. That's so. If I mark these things as mandatory, let's do that. So what happens when you do that is you cannot save your purchase order without selecting these three segmentations. Let me bring in the purchase order again. They're not showing asterisk as of now, but I think it's going to take some time, but sales channel location and everything would be made mandatory. So you cannot save your purchase order without actually selecting those things for you. Any questions on that? And why exactly do you want to make it mandatory? That is because you want to segregate things based on your segmentation. So if you mark the class as mandatory, if you mark the department as mandatory and all these things as mandatory, then what happens is your reporting structure would actually have all these things for sure. Whoever is making changes over there with the classes, departments and locations, whoever is making a change, whoever is putting in these transactions would definitely have these things selected. And it reflects in your reporting structure. Somehow this is not getting disabled for us. So this is a test instance. Sometimes it might happen so that you will move certain things that are enabled and disabled. It takes time for it to actually sync in with the system. So that's what it could be. But let us see. We can do that later. So this is your revenue recognition, which is an advanced topic. As I have mentioned earlier, you will not use this revenue recognition part as part of the standard NetSuite procedure. Only if you are into NetSuite, like for 3 or 4 years, and if you are able to handle advanced implementation, that is when you will actually deal with this revenue recognition part. That's about the first step. Now going into the items and transactions. So what you see over here, you have a purchase discount account, you have a sales discount account, you have a default expense account, you have your default receivables account. So what exactly these things are? Now for every transaction that you do, let it be a purchase order or a sales order, or if you're dealing with any of the items. In that case, there are certain default accounts which actually come across on the items. So all these things, you can actually select them as default. COGS is nothing but your cost of goods sold. There is an account called as cost of goods sold. So where exactly does it come? It comes in the part of the sales process. So whenever you are by default, when you are creating a sales order, there is a cost associated with that item. So any item that you want to sell, there is a cost associated with that item. So that is nothing but your cost of goods sold. So where exactly are these selected? If when you are creating your items, you go to lists, accounting and items. So when I click on this new item and when I try to create my, let us say, inventory item. So when you select that and scroll down, if you scroll down and go to the accounting part, there are certain accounts which are pre-selected. You see this. My case shows 5,000 purchases. Income account shows 4,000 sales. Where exactly are you getting it from? You're getting it from the accounting preferences. You see this. So this is default income account is 4,000 sales. So that is how it is already defined at the accounting level. What is your default payments account? I have a question. Go ahead. What is this? What is that number? Means that 5,000 purchase 4,000. Perfect. So what is this number? If you remember start of the call, I was talking about the use account numbers on the GLS. There is a preference that I spoke about use account numbers. You remember that? Chart of accounts. I have shown you the number. This is what is the number. When we assign this number, it got reflected. So you can assign that number and that is what you 5,000 purchases. That is what is your cards account which will reflect. So all these numbers you see over here would actually come at because you have selected a preference saying that I want to assign a number for the account. And by the way, this is not the actual account number. Don't think that just like the way you have your Citibank or your HDFC account number. No. This is an internal number which is assigned to your accounts over there. And those are the ones which you can actually select it under the accounting preferences. Now I've selected the default payment account and you can set the default vendor payment account as well. Default gain or loss account, which will be your income account. Like this, you can select all the default accounts over here and they will get defaulted at the item level whenever you're selecting the item. So why do you want to select the default accounts over here when you're doing with the item? The reason behind that is whenever you make transactions with these items, when you purchase this item or when you sell this item, then you want the account numbers to be updated. So for every transaction, you have a GL impact. What is the GL impact? General ledger impact. When you're putting in a purchase order, there is a non-posting transaction. When you're doing an item receipt, there is a posting transaction which happens. So on all these GL accounts, if you want the GL postings to be updated, then you will have to select the default accounts over here. Or you can select your accounts manually at the item level as well. Here you can change the item. At the general preference level, you might have 5,000 purchases as your cost of goods sold, but you might want to have some other as cost of goods sold, like this. Then you can select that account. Even income account, you can have your. This is how you can search what is your income account and everything. So you can select it and then save it here as well. But these are the general preferences which are set up at the account level. Any questions on that? Any questions? No, please, thank you. So what is the quantity based price levels? So I think I already discussed with you about this. What is the quantity pricing? If the customer takes 500 quantity, then I want the price to be $1,000. If customer takes 600 quantity, then I want to give it only for 900. If he takes 700, I want to give it only for 800. So likewise, you can set up your quantity pricing levels. For item at the item level, when you are dealing with the items, when you go to the inventory item and go to the sales pricing tab. So when you scroll down, there is something called, as you see this. So you can specify your item. I'll take an example here. It's a 500, 600, 800. What I'm saying is my base price from 0 to 500. I want this to be done 1000. And for 500 quantity, I want 900, 800, 700 and 600. This is how you can actually define your quantity pricing schedule. So how many levels have you defined? 500 to 600, 600 to 700, 800 to 800. There are 5 levels. And where are you getting these 5 levels from? If you specify this as 10, then this is going to show 10 boxes for you where you can define the ranges, the quantity ranges for you. Any questions on that? Yes, sir, go ahead. The left side. Previous screen. So on the left side, like Diwali sale online price. So this is another concept. Perfect. Perfect. Good question. So this is another concept wherein you can define your discount ranges when you go to accounting lists. When you come here, there is something called as price level. You click on this and then this is what your actually discount option is. You can set up. I have set up the Christmas discount as 5%. Maybe you see this minus 5%. So that is why when you're defining the base price, it automatically picks up your Christmas discount, which is 90-50. And then Diwali sale 25%, 70-50 online price. So all these things are defined at the pricing level. I go back and I select the online price, and this will show a 10%, 7% discount. So it will automatically calculate your amount. So here online, what we are seeing, it has to increase by 7%. This is not a negative 7%. This is not a discount. So whenever I'm selling it online, I want to increase the price by 7%. So that is the reason if I specify 1000 here, it picks up 1070 over here. Likewise, see 75% Radhika. Someone has set this up. However, while setting it up, they have not mentioned any markup discount for that. So let us do this. I go to edit and I'm saying that this has to be 10%. Save. And then I can refresh this. When I scroll down, go to the sales pricing. Click on sales pricing. And when you scroll down, see the 10% is updated now. So what I can do is, if I say 10,000, then another 1100 would be my Radhika's price. See, because I mentioned 10% over there. If I had mentioned minus 10, then this would be 900. And all these things can be updated through the CSV imports. You don't have to do this manually because there are thousands of items within the system. So all I can do is I can specify what's my base price. Depending on that, my quantities, depending on my base price, this is going to change automatically based on the, whatever quantities I'm going to give. And when you select these quantities on the sales order, if I can select this as, let's say I want to give it for 990, I want to keep this for 980, I want to keep this for 970 and 960. So automatically when you select this quantity on the sales order as 200, then automatically it picks up this sales price. It won't give me the $11. And this listing, the price level that I've taken. If there is an option on the sales order to select this, I can select this item and then I can say I can select the Christmas discount. Obviously, if I give 200 and select Christmas discount, it will take 940 50 cents automatically. Based on the discount that I'm giving, it will take this particular price. Any questions on this? We will discuss these in detail. Now there is another option. There is multiple currencies. Since we have enabled the multiple currency option, whatever you see here is the USA US dollars. You can do the same thing in British pound as well. So if you select, let's say in British pound, it's about 800. For 200, you want to give it for 7990, 780, 7760, so on and so forth. So when you do this, it automatically calculates everything based on what you have given here. And the conversion rates pick up automatically. There is a conversion rate defined at the exchange rate. It is called the exchange rate actually on NetSuite. So British pound to United States USD, Canadian dollar to USD. All these things are defined automatically, but the quantities are defaulted once you give it for here. Once you specify here, the quantities are going to be defaulted here as, and when you give it for the other currencies. Any questions on that? I hope the concept is clear. Yes. Great. So that is what your quantity-based price levels is all about. Now allow quantity discounts per price level on schedules. So you want to allow the quantity discounts to be as per the price levels. You can actually select this on the schedules as well directly. So what is the schedule? So there's something called as quantity pricing schedule over here. So I have decided I have created a test schedule in the quantity pricing. So when I select that, automatically my quantities are defaulted. You see this. Earlier, I had to give these things manually. If I don't select any quantity pricing schedule, then these things have to be defined manually. But I can use a quantity pricing schedule. And where exactly is this defined? This is defined under quantity pricing schedule. I think it's under lists. So this is my quantity pricing schedule. How exactly is this defined? If I go in here, I can see my test schedule. So I can just click on this test schedule. So what I'm saying is, if it is a 10 quantity, then it's got to be 10%. If it is 20 quantity, it's got to be 20%. 30 quantity, so on and so forth. So I can also edit this and say I can define myself, 40% 40 quantity. I want it as 40% discount just as a test. Usually so much of this content is not given. But this is a test scenario. What I'm doing is, I can set up these things and then save. Before it, non-zero quantity allowed for 4 non-zero quantities are allowed. I think it's taking up to 4 levels. That's fine. So what I did is now, if I go back to my inventory item, I try to refresh this. And if I select my quantity pricing schedule under this sales, instead of giving the quantities manually, what I'm doing is I'll go to sales price, scroll down, and then I click on the test schedule. Then it picks up the schedule automatically. So there is a zero quantity from 0 to 10. It is taking one schedule, 20, 30, 40. So that is the reason I'm able to schedule 5. Because of the preference, I have set up only 5. Now if I save this as 6, then I will be able to select the other one on my quantity pricing schedule. I go to list accounting and then go to my quantity pricing schedule again. And I edit this here. I can give another 51 because I have defined as 6 levels. So it let me save. Accounting will go to the accounting preferences again. Item transactions. 6. That's will go to the list accounting and then pricing quantity prices schedule again. Let's try to create a new one. I think it's because of that. This time what we'll do is the 100% discount. 500, I would say I'm going to give a 20% discount. And then after 1000 quantity, I want to give a 25% discount. So let us try and save this. Still it is taking only. I think it's taking some time, guys. I don't know what's up with this. So that is what it is. You can set it up. Let's do one thing. Items if, and then we'll try to do it manually, just taking the quantity pricing schedule. Let's go into this pricing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still additional 5. I don't know. I mean, it's taking some time, but that's. So you can select your test pricing schedule from here, and then you can specify what your quantities are automatically based on this. So I'm not giving any prices. I just give this 1000 and then it picks up everything automatically. I think we've given like positive And that's the reason it's taking 1100, 1200. So which is wrong? You go to the schedule and then you have to take all these as negative discounts. This is what you've got to do. We've given all positive and it's increasing, which is wrong. So save this. Select my new trade again. So I can select this and give up base quantity, base price, and then it picks it up automatically. $1,900,877 based on the quantity that we have selected. Any questions on this? Please. So I'm not going to explain the quantity pricing once again when we are doing the transactions, since we have already discussed this in detail over here. Hope it's clear. So on the inventory require bins on all transactions on, use preferred bin on item receipts. So, as we have discussed about these bins last time around, in every warehouse, if you have visited IKEA or any store, you would have different bins for each item. They select each bin and that information is stored on a computer. So, whenever you want to go and pick up this item, you have to search for that bin, where exactly that bin is. What is the bin number? And based on the bin number, you can pick up the items from there. So that is what is your required bin on all transactions except item receipts. Use preferred bin on item receipts. All these things, when you enable them by default, you have to provide what are the bins when you're doing an item receipt. So let us try and enable that. The reason why it got enabled is, I think in the enable features we have enabled a feature which is called as use bins. So if I go here, bin management. You see this, since we have enabled the bin management over here on the accounting preferences, we have that preference. So do you want to make it mandatory or not? That is one of the preference. So these things are interlinked. Whatever you enable here in the enable features, you enable that here and that particular, the preference of that particular option will be available here under the accounting preferences. Any questions? I take that as a no. Thank you. So, coming to your allow landed costs, in the last purchase price, I discussed about the landed cost. What exactly is a landed cost whenever the item is shipped by the vendor? It comes to the airport or it can come to the dockyard. It can come to your bus stand or whatever it is. So the amount you have spent to bring that from your airport to the warehouse is your landed cost. So we have already enabled the landed cost, and whenever you enable the landed cost, there is an option under the accounting which is called as track landed costs. Track landed cost. We enable it use bins. You see this? You can select this and then the bins will be used. But apart from that, I think it is because of the form. Let's go to the standard inventory part form. I'll show you what forms are. You know how different forms are created. All these things I will show you. But when you go there and you see this, so this is one of the setups for the landed cost. Whenever you want to track the landed cost on that item, you have to select track landed cost or else it will not allow you to track it. I mean, you cannot end up the landed cost on that particular item when you are purchasing it from a vendor and then payment processing. Customers can pay online. All these are the preferences that you have in a credit card. Transactions can be there. The card security code. All these things can be enabled in the accounting preferences whenever a customer is making a payment through their card or through the online payments. That is what is your payment processing all about. Any questions on that? So let's go to the order management. So under the order management, there are certain preferences that you can enable and disable, and you can set up the preferences. So what exactly is your preference? What is the default order status when you are creating a sales order? What do you want to have the status as? There are two statuses. One is pending approval and the other one is pending fulfillment. So when you select pending approval and when you're creating the sales order, initially go to the pending approval state and from there the next approver. Let that be a sales manager who would be the next approver. So it will go to that particular sales manager. He has to approve the sales order. Only then the warehouse people will be able to process the sales order. That is what your pending approval is. What is pending fulfillment? So by default, you're saying that when I create a sales order, I do not want it to be in pending state. It has to go to the fulfillment directly. Fulfillment is nothing but shipping out of the material from your warehouse is your pending fulfillment. So do you want it as pending approval or do you want to do? You want to do. You want the status to be correctly as pending fulfillment. That is, what is your preference, which you can set it up here. Require reapproval on edit of sales order. What happens when you select this? Whenever you put in a sales order and save, you are making some edits on the sales order. Like you have changed the quantity or you have changed the sales price on it, unit price, or you have changed the sales tax. If you have upgraded anything, do you want this sales order to be sending out for an approval again? So usually in a business case scenario, definitely this is checked. So as a salesperson, as a sales representative, I spoke with a customer and I said this is going to be in DON 100. I put in a sales order and it is approved by my manager. However, if I go back and say I want to make it to DON 95 again, so whenever I make that change, I want my manager to be notified once again because you don't want the sales rep to be, making changes as and when they want to. If I say DON 100 and I want to do a favor for that customer, so as a sales rep, I can go back and make that to DON 10 also once it is approved. So in a business case scenario, we do not want that to happen and that is the reason this require reapproval on edit of sales order is done. So if you click open this, the field help you see this. If you edit a sales order while using a role with permission to approve sales orders, the sales order status is not set to pending approval status. So if I'm a purchase manager, sorry, sales manager, I have approved it and if I edit this, it should not be going to the pending approval. Correct. But if a user, if a sales rep is making these changes, then it has to be going to the approval. Send email confirmation when sales order is cancelled. to the customer. Do you want to send the emails automatically? That is what one of it is. Default location for sales orders. You might want to select any default location so that all my sales happen only from one warehouse. I do not. I do not have a sales process in the other warehouses. In that case, I can select the default location for my sales orders. This is a little tricky one, guys. Just try to understand what I'm saying now. We will see this when we are doing the transactions, but just try to understand the concept here. For the default commit option on sales orders, work orders, transfer orders. What exactly this means is there are three options. One is the available quantity. The other one is complete quantity. Do not complete, do not commit. So what is an available quantity? When I select available quantity, let us say I have a sales order for 50 quantity. However, in my warehouse, at present I have only 45 quantity. So this preference is what do you want to do with the sales order if you have short quantity? Short quantity available. What do you want to do with the sales order? The first option is available quantity, which means the 45 quantity is shipped out instantly. And system creates a back order for 5 quantity. And when I have the 5 quantity available in the system, which means I have created a purchase order for this 5 quantity and it took 10 days for me to get this quantity in the system. So for this, what happens is the system sends out the 45 quantity initially and then waits for my other 5 quantity to be in the warehouse. After 10 days, you will be able to process the back order. This is the available quantity concept. Clear on this? Yes, clear. This is clear? Yes, clear. So this is called available quantity. Now, what is the complete quantity? Complete quantity. Let's take the same scenario here. I have sales order for 50 quantity again, and then in my warehouse I just have 45 quantity. So what will system do in this case? In this case, system will not fulfill 45 also. You have to wait for the complete quantity in the system. So BO has to be created. You wait for 10 days for that 5 quantity to be available. And once you have the entire 50 quantity, that is when you will be able to fulfill this sales order. Clear on this? If you select it as complete quantity, the preference as complete quantity, that is what the system will do. Then it would process only when it has the appropriate quantity available. Absolutely. The full quantity has to be there within the system and only then it will allow the sales order to be fulfilled. So till then, the order which was placed will be on hold, or what happens to that? It will be on hold. So even if you're trying to fulfill, it will say that your preference is set up to complete quantity. Please get the complete quantity into the warehouse. Only then you'll be able to fulfill. Got it. So what is do not commit? Do not commit. What this means is until you come back and make change here. Like you either have to keep it available quantity or you would have to do a complete quantity. So unless you mark any one of this, the system will not do anything. The entire sales orders will be on hold. So in a business scenario, this is never selected. Or this is selected only when the warehouse operations are completely on hold. Got you. Any questions on that? I have a question on the initial part where the approval takes part. So do we have option to who should exactly approve the sales order? Yes, absolutely. Shut up. There is something called as a workflow. So if you go to customizations, there is something called as workflow. So you can create your own workflows and you can define the roles. Who has to approve what you can create? When you're creating a workflow, you can create it on sales order. You can define various stages, saying that if there is a sales order beyond $1,000, then the sales manager has to approve. If it is $5,000, that the CEO has to approve. So likewise, you can create your workflows. Thank you. Any questions on that? I'm good. Thanks. So you got the concept. So same concept applies for your work orders and for your transfer orders. What is a work order? A work order is nothing but your assembly order. When you are trying to create a manufacturing item order, then that is your work order. What is the transfer order? You want to transfer the inventory between one location to another, one subsidiary to another. That is what is your transfer order, and all these options are the same for all these. I mean, the concept is same. So, and then you can have 3 different stages when you want to fulfill the item. First one is a pick, pack and ship. So stages of picking up. So picking is a warehouse personnel will pick up your material. Someone is going to packing from the packing section and someone's going to ship it out. Pick, pack and ship. So these are the 3 things that you want in the order management, that is your sales process again. So and then allow overage on item fulfillments. So here again, fulfill based on commitment. So limit to committed, allow uncommitted. This is the similar scope that we were talking about. I mean, same thing that we discussed earlier. We want to limit that to committed, or do you want to allow uncommitted, ignore commitment? So let us say there is 1000 quantity to be shipped out. So you're saying allow overage on item fulfillment, which means even if the sales order is for 1000, you can go ahead and ship out 10 and invoice for 10. It will give the warehouse people to authorization to fulfill beyond what is there on the sales order. So this is what is your preference. Send out a fulfilled confirmation email to the customers. So that option is also there. Show unfilled items on the invoices. So whatever is unfulfilled, do you want to show it on the? So there are Take same example 50. Quantity 45 free we have shipped, but do you want to show the 5 items which have not shipped on the invoice as well as pending? So you can do that invoice in advance of fulfillment. This option, even before you ship out the 45 quantity, can you invoice your customers. If you select this, even before the fulfillment is done, you will be able to invoice the customers in advance and take the payment. So this is usually happening in case of high valued products, like in case of, let's say, a big equipment, bulldozers, tower, crane equipment. If customers want to buy them, you might want to take some advance from them. So in that case, you can invoice them in advance of fulfillment. Automatically email dropship POs. So what is a dropship and special orders? We already discussed about dropship orders and special orders. There are big equipments that you don't want to keep it in your warehouse. So once a sales order is created, an attached purchase order is created for the same. And then your vendor will directly ship out the material to your customer. Instead of bringing the material into your warehouse, your vendor will actually ship it out to the customer. That is what your dropship item is. What is a special order item? Special order item is C. Usually in case of small amounts, like let's say the item is only $50 or 100, then you buy them, keep it in your warehouse. And whenever you have an order, you sell it for higher price. Like in for 50, you might sell it for 70, for 100, you might sell it for the 120. But if the item cost is very high, like to 1 million or something, then you select this and invoice in advance of fulfillment. You take a sales order by creating that item as a special order. So once you create a sales order, a depending purchase order is created. You take the payment from the customer for $1 medallion and then you pay to your vendor for just, let us say, $0.8 million only. And once you make the payment, you get the equipment into your warehouse and then you will ship it out to your customer. That is what is your special order item is all about. So we'll discuss them in a while. We are creating the purchase orders for you. But that is what happens when you mark the items as special orders. And where exactly can you mark them? You go to items new. So you can either mark an item as special order or dropship. You cannot have both of them. So scroll down. See this, you can mark it as dropship, and when you mark it as special order, the other one goes off like this. You can make an item cannot be both special order and dropship item. It can be either of them questions. Any questions on that? So for a dropship item, what we're saying is do not allow unequal quantities. So if a customer wants 10 quantity, then the vendor should be able to ship only 10, not 9 or 11. Because we are not getting those into our warehouse, the vendor is the one who will do that. So we are not allowing the vendor to actually do that. Allow expenses on purchases. When you want to do a purchase order, when you are entering a purchase order, there are two tabs. One is an expense tab and the other one is an item tab. You see this. This is what I was referring to. So since you have enabled that expenses over here, that is why you see the expense tab, or else this will not be seen over here. So on a purchase order, you either can choose an item or you can just say an expense category. Also can be done. So what I'm saying is I purchased, my team has gone for a dinner, so I can just put in a purchase order with that expense account saying that there is a Laura 100 bill for my team which had lunch. So I can show that as an expense directly on the expense tab if you enable this feature. Questions? The earlier preference was for the sales orders wherein, we were saying allow overage on fulfillments. Here it is allowing overage on item receipts. So there is a 10 quantity purchase order. Do you want to allow receiving more than that or not? So sometimes what happens is vendors will send a quantity which is higher than what you have ordered. So in that case, you can change the quantity to higher. So if you order 12, he has sent 15. So you can say 15, you can receive and you can bill for 15 directly. If you allow this, allow overage on item receipts. I think we are almost at the top of the hour, but these are all different preferences that you have. I mean, these are, when you go through these preferences, they're very easy to understand as well. So what is depending return authorization status? Do you want it as pending fulfillment or do you want more? Pending receipt or do you want pending approval? Same thing. Do you want to restock a returned item? So whenever whenever a customer ships out the material which is defaulted, which is defective, in that case, do you want to restock this returned items or not? That is what is your option, default vendor return status. So this is pending fulfillment and pending approval. Fulfillment is nothing but your return. It is called a pending return. So we can stop here for the day. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.